Tukari stood at the edge of the Terran Federation's high-security research facility, his eyes scanning the vast dark sky above. The hum of the airship behind him barely reached his ears. His mission today was simple: gather intel and report back. But deep inside, something didn't feel right. It had never felt like this before. The Terran officer walked down the narrow corridor leading to the main vault. He kept thinking about the recent whispers he'd heard from a trusted source. A small piece of information, something about a betrayal, had surfaced in the intelligence files. It was clear to Tukari that it was more than just a rumor. The faintest trace of truth lingered in his mind. Someone inside the Federation was working against them. But who? And why? Tukari shook his head, trying to clear his thoughts. There was no time for doubt. His duty was to uncover the truth, not dwell on it. He walked past the doors, each sealed tight and reinforced with top-of-the-line security. But this was nothing Tukari couldn't handle. He had trained for this his entire life. Suddenly, his comms device buzzed in his ear. It was a message from his superior, Captain Rylan, back on the ship. Tukari. Rylan's voice was calm, but edged with urgency. We just intercepted a transmission. There's something you need to see. It's big. Be careful. Tukari's heart skipped a beat. A warning? His instincts flared up. Something was definitely off. He quickly accessed the transmission, but what he saw on the screen almost made him freeze. A recorded message from his own mentor, Lieutenant Vira, appeared in front of him. Her face was pale, eyes filled with guilt. Tukari, if you're seeing this, it means you're getting close to the truth. I never wanted you involved in this, but now it's too late. The Federation is not what you think it is. We've been working with the Tukari Empire behind your back. I was forced to help them, or they would have killed us all. Please understand. I did it to protect you. Tukari's mind raced. Vera had always been the one to guide him, the one he looked up to. But now, she was confessing to betraying everything they had stood for. He had to know more. He continued to watch the message as Vera explained the deal she had made with the Tukari Empire. She had been promised a powerful position in exchange for secrets about the Terran Federation's most guarded weapons. The plan was simple: infiltrate the Federation, gather intelligence, and then sell it to the enemy. The Federation had been betrayed from the inside, and Tukari was now a part of it.as. The video ended. Tukari felt a wave of anger and confusion flood through him. He didn't know who to trust anymore. His mentor, the person who had taught him everything he knew, had betrayed him. But there were still so many questions. Why hadn't Vira told him earlier? Why was she still alive? Before he could process it all, the sound of footsteps echoed down the hall. Tukari quickly turned, hiding behind a nearby wall. His pulse raced as he watched two figures approach. They were dressed in dark uniforms, carrying weapons. Federation soldiers? No, they didn't look like them. One of the figures stepped forward and spoke in a low voice. We need to move quickly. He's too close. If Tukari finds out what we've done, it's over for all of us. Tukari's blood ran cold. They were talking about him. He realized then that Vera wasn't the only one involved in the betrayal. There were others, people he had trusted, people who had been working against the Federation all along. The question was, who could he trust now? He had to move fast. Every moment spent in this place brought him closer to uncovering the truth and closer to danger. Tukari knew he couldn't trust anyone anymore, not even the people who had been by his side for so long. The only way out now was to go deeper into the facility to find the files that could expose everything. But the deeper he went, the more risks he took. As Tukari made his way through the labyrinth of halls, he was careful to avoid being seen. He knew there were eyes watching him. The betrayal ran deeper than he had imagined, and every corner held a new danger. He couldn't afford to make a mistake. Finally, after what felt like hours, Tukari reached the vault where the classified files were stored. He hacked into the system, his fingers flying over the console. The data he needed appeared on the screen. But as he read through the files, his heart sank. The Federation had been planning to launch a surprise attack on the Tukari Empire. But instead of stopping it, Some high-ranking officials had secretly been helping the Tukari. They had been feeding them intel about the Federation's strategies, and now the enemy was ready to strike. The very people he had trusted his superiors were the ones who had sold out the Federation. Tukari felt the weight of the betrayal crash down on him. He'd been walking into a trap all along. Every move he had made, every step he had taken, had brought him closer to his own undoing. But Tukari wasn't about to give up. The truth had to come out, no matter the cost. With one last look at the files, Tukari knew what he had to do. He had to expose the betrayal, even if it meant risking his life. The Terran Federation deserved to know the truth, and he would make sure they did. Tukari stood quietly on the observation deck of the starship, his eyes fixed on the distant stars. The hum of the engines filled the air, but his thoughts were far away. He had just returned from a mission, but something had changed inside him. A new assignment had been given, one that seemed routine at first, but now he wasn't so sure. He had received a message, an encrypted file sent to him from an unknown source. The message was short but startling. It simply said, "Your past is not what you think it is. Find the truth before it's too late." Tukari wasn't one to panic easily. But those words gnawed at him, pulling him in. He had always known that his past was a mystery, but this message suggested that there was more to his history than he had ever imagined. As a child, he had been found abandoned on a distant planet. His parents were unknown, and no one had ever been able to trace his origins. It had always been a part of him, a question that he never had the answer to. The message felt like a warning. Someone was out there, someone who knew something about him that he didn't. And whoever it was, they were clearly watching him closely. Tukari couldn't ignore it. He had to know what the message meant. He needed to understand the truth, no matter what it cost him. He decided to go back to the planet where he had been found, a place he hadn't visited in years. Maybe, just maybe, the answers lay there. He could feel the weight of the decision on his shoulders, but there was no turning back now. Hours later, Tukari's ship landed on the barren surface of the planet. The place looked exactly as he remembered, silent, empty, and desolate. It was hard to believe that this was where his life had started, or where it had been stolen from him. The wind whispered through the cracked landscape, and Tukari could almost hear the echoes of his childhood, lost and forgotten. He made his way to the old ruins where he had been found all those years ago. The structure was falling apart, just like everything else on the planet. But as he stepped through the broken doors, something caught his eye. A faint glow from an old control panel, hidden beneath the rubble. Curious, Tukari approached and carefully moved the debris aside. The control panel flickered to life with a soft beep. The screen showed a series of coordinates and a name, Vera. Tukari's heart skipped a beat. Vera. He recognized the name instantly. Vera had been his mentor, the one person who had guided him through the ranks of the Federation. But why was her name here? And what did these coordinates mean? Without hesitation, he typed the coordinates into his wrist device. They led to a remote location deep in Federation-controlled space. It was a place he had never been before, a place that didn't appear on most star maps. The more Tukari thought about it, the more he realized that this wasn't just a coincidence. Something had been hidden from him for years, and he was about to uncover it. He quickly boarded his ship again and set course for the mysterious location. As the stars blurred past, Tukari couldn't shake the feeling that he was being drawn into something far larger than he could have imagined. Whatever he was about to find, it was going to change everything. Hours later, Tukari's ship arrived at a small, isolated station. The station was abandoned, silent, as if no one had been there for a long time. Tukari's instincts told him that he was getting closer to the truth. He stepped out of the ship and entered the dark, empty station. The interior was cold, but there was something else, something alive. A faint hum came from deeper inside the station. Tukari followed the sound, his footsteps echoing through the halls. It led him to a large room, where he found a small chamber hidden behind a wall. Inside the chamber was a single, solitary figure. It was Vera. But she wasn't the person Tukari remembered. She looked older, her face pale, and her eyes filled with guilt. She was connected to several machines, as if she had been waiting for him. Takari stepped forward, his heart racing. "Vera?" he called out, his voice filled with disbelief. Vera's eyes flickered open, and she slowly turned her head toward him. "Takari," she whispered, her voice weak. "You've come to find the truth, haven't you?" Takari nodded, his breath catching in his throat. "What happened here? Why are you like this?" Vera smiled faintly. "I've been waiting for you. You're the key to everything, Takari. The truth about your past, about who you really are." Takari felt a chill run down his spine. "What do you mean? Tell me everything." Vera hesitated, her gaze distant. "You were never just an orphan. You were part of an experiment, a project that aimed to combine the best traits of both the Terrans and the Takari. You were designed to be the perfect soldier, the bridge between two worlds. I was tasked with protecting you, keeping you hidden from the truth." Takari's mind spun. "What? How could I not know this?" "Because I erased your memories," Vera admitted, her voice cracking. "I didn't want you to be a weapon. I wanted you to have a chance at a normal life. But I couldn't protect you forever." Takari took a step back, his world shattering around him. The woman who had raised him, who had guided him, had lied to him his entire life. He wasn't just some ordinary officer. He was part of a much darker plan, a plan he had never known about. As Vira's words sank in, Takari understood that he had been part of something huge, something dangerous. And now the truth was finally out. But what would he do with it? How could he live with this new reality? Vera's voice broke through his thoughts. "It's not over, Takari. There are still those who want to use you, to control you. You have to stop them before it's too late." Takari's hands clenched into fists. His past had been a lie. But now, he had the power to change everything. The truth had been revealed. And now, the real battle would begin. Takari had never been the type to second-guess himself. But tonight, as he walked through the cold, quiet halls of the Federation's abandoned research facility, doubt crept into his mind. Something wasn't right. He could feel it in the air, thick and heavy like a storm about to break. This mission had seemed simple enough: investigate a rogue signal coming from the station. But now, as he ventured deeper into the facility, it felt like he was walking straight into a trap. His boots echoed off the steel floor, each step amplifying the silence around him. His comms device buzzed softly in his ear, the only sound breaking the stillness. It was Captain Rylan. "Takari, we've got a problem." Rylan's voice was tense, laced with urgency. "We've traced the signal to the station, but there's something off about it. It's not just a data transmission. It's a message. A warning." Takari's pulse quickened. A warning? He felt a knot form in his stomach. What could it be? Why would someone send a warning from an abandoned Federation research facility? What kind of warning? Takari asked, his voice steady, though his mind raced. "It's encrypted," Rylan replied. "But it's addressed to you, specifically. We think it's someone you know, Takari. Someone close." Takari's heart skipped. Someone close? The thought chilled him. Could it be his mentor, Vera? She had always been a guiding hand, the one he trusted more than anyone else. But was she hiding something? The idea gnawed at him. "I'll dig deeper," Takari said, trying to shake off the unease. "Stay on the line. I'll keep you updated." The message buzzed through his mind as he continued through the dark corridors. The facility was eerily quiet, as if it had been abandoned for years. But something about it didn't seem right. Too much was left behind. It felt like it had been emptied out in a hurry. He reached the main control room. The door slid open with a soft hiss, revealing a darkened room filled with rows of consoles and monitors. As Takari approached one of the consoles, a flash of light caught his eye. On one of the screens was a message, blinking in bright red: "The Federation cannot be trusted. Your past is not what you think it is. The truth is hidden, but you must find it." The words struck him like a slap in the face. His past? What was this about? He had always been told his mission was clear, his loyalty unquestionable. But now, this message, so personal, so direct began to crack his certainty. He tried to access the system, typing in the necessary codes. But the screen flickered, showing strange symbols. He had seen these symbols before, somewhere, but where? A loud thud echoed from behind him. Takari spun around, reaching for his weapon. He didn't have to wait long. A shadow moved in the doorway. Someone was there. "Takari, don't you remember me?" The voice was low, familiar. Too familiar. It was Vera. But this wasn't the Vira he knew. Her once calm and composed demeanor was replaced with something darker, colder. "Vira?" Takari's voice trembled despite himself. "What is this? What's going on?" Vera stepped into the room, her eyes hard, but there was something else in them, guilt. "I never wanted you to find out like this," she said, her voice barely a whisper. "But it's too late now." "Find out what?" Takari's pulse raced, his hand still tight on his weapon. "What are you hiding from me?" She hesitated for a moment, then walked over to the console Takari had been trying to access. "You were never meant to be a simple soldier, Takari," Vera said quietly. "You're part of something much bigger, something no one ever told you. This mission, it's all a lie." Takari's mind raced. Part of something bigger? A lie? His whole life, everything he had been taught to believe, was crashing down in front of him. He had been trained for this, raised to trust the Federation, to follow orders. But now, nothing made sense anymore. "Tell me the truth, Vera," he demanded, stepping closer. "What's going on? What have you done?" Vera's face twisted in pain. "I didn't want to, Takari. But the Federation had plans for you. You were never just a soldier. You were designed for something far more dangerous than you could ever imagine." Takari's eyes widened. "Created? What are you talking about?" "There's a project," Vera continued, her voice shaking. "A secret project, one that involved combining the best of both the Terrans and the Takari. They used your bloodline, your DNA, to create you a perfect weapon. And I was part of it. I had no choice." Takari stumbled back. This couldn't be true. It didn't make sense. He had always believed in the cause, in the Federation's mission. But now, everything was a lie. "Why didn't you tell me?" Takari's voice was strained, his chest tight with anger and confusion. "Why keep this from me?" Vera lowered her head, tears welling in her eyes. "I tried to protect you, Takari. I wanted to keep you safe from the truth. But they knew you were the key. And now, the Federation wants to use you to start a war with the Takari Empire." The words hit him like a blast. A war? Was he nothing more than a tool for destruction? "No," Takari whispered. "I won't let them use me. I won't be a part of this." Vera looked at him, her expression softening. "You have to stop them, Takari, before they come for you. Before they use your blood to destroy everything." Takari stood in silence, his heart pounding. The truth was clear now, his past, his very existence, had been manipulated. But the future was still in his hands. And now, he had a choice: fight back or be part of the darkness. The decision was his. The battle had just begun. Takari's hands were shaking as he walked through the dark corridors of the Federation's military base. The silence weighed heavily on him, the only sound being his boots clicking against the cold metal floor. He had received another strange message, one that chilled him to the bone. It wasn't just a warning this time, it was a command. "The enemy is closer than you think, Takari. Watch the ones you trust most." At first, he had thought it was just another cryptic threat from a rival faction. But as he sat in the dim light of his quarters, reading the message over and over, the words took on a deeper meaning. The enemy within. What did that even mean? Who was the enemy? He thought back to the people closest to him, his mentor, Vera, his superior, Captain Rylan, and his comrades in the Federation. They had all been with him from the beginning, helping him rise through the ranks. Could one of them really be betraying him? His mind raced, but he quickly pushed the thoughts aside. He couldn't afford to doubt anyone, not yet. He had a mission to complete, and he couldn't allow these suspicions to cloud his judgment. But deep down, A part of him couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling that something wasn't right. Tukari arrived at the mission briefing room, where Captain Rylan was already waiting. Rylan was a tall man, his expression always serious, but today there was something off about him. His eyes darted nervously as Tukari entered, and his usual calm demeanor seemed to falter for just a moment. "Good, you're here," Rylan said, his voice steady but with a hint of tension. "We have a new operation. The Tukari Empire is moving forces near our borders. We need to act fast." Tukari nodded, but something in the captain's tone didn't sit well with him. He couldn't shake the feeling that Rylan was hiding something. The way he avoided eye contact, the way his hand trembled slightly as he handed over the mission brief. It was subtle, but it was there. "Anything unusual about the mission, sir?" Tukari asked, trying to keep his voice calm, though the suspicion was building inside him. Rylan hesitated, then shook his head. "No, everything's standard. But you're the best we've got, Tukari. We need you on this." Tukari took the mission brief, but he couldn't shake the feeling that there was more to this than what Rylan was telling him. As he left the briefing room, his mind was swirling with questions. Why did Rylan seem so uneasy? Why had he been acting different lately? As Tukari prepared for the mission, he ran a quick check on the equipment and personnel. The soldiers assigned to the operation seemed ready, but there was something in their eyes and unease, a tension that wasn't there before. Was it just the pressure of the mission, or was something more sinister at play? His thoughts were interrupted by the sound of footsteps approaching. He turned to see Vera entering the room. Her presence was always a comfort to him, but today there was a strange coldness in her eyes. "Tukari," she said, her voice softer than usual. "We need to talk." He frowned. "What's going on, Vera?" "Something feels off about all of this." She glanced around, making sure no one was listening. "I don't know how to say this," she began, her voice trembling, "but I think we're being set up. The Federation. They've been compromised. One of us is working with the Tukari Empire." Tukari's blood ran cold. "What are you saying? Who? Who's the traitor?" Vera shook her head, her face filled with fear. "I don't know, but I've seen things. Small things that don't add up. There are files missing, orders being given without explanation. And the captain. Rylan, I think he knows more than he's letting on." Tukari's heart raced as the pieces began to fall into place. He had been right to feel suspicious. Rylan's strange behavior, Vera's warning, and the cryptic message, it all pointed to one thing. There was a traitor in their midst. He had to know the truth, no matter the cost. "I'll find out, Vera," Tukari said, his voice steady despite the storm raging in his chest. "I promise." The mission went ahead as planned, but Tukari couldn't focus on the task at hand. His mind kept returning to Rylan and the others. He needed answers. As soon as the operation was over, he would confront them all. He had to find out who the enemy within was before it was too late. The battle with the Tukari forces was fierce, but Tukari's mind wasn't on the fight. He couldn't ignore the gnawing feeling in his gut. Every time he looked at Rylan or Vera, he wondered, were they in on this? Were they part of the conspiracy? When the mission was complete, Tukari returned to the base, his mind more determined than ever to uncover the truth. He went straight to the security office and accessed the encrypted files. What he found sent a chill down his spine. Rylan wasn't just acting strangely, he was in contact with the Tukari Empire. The files were clear. He had been feeding them intel, undermining their operations from within. Tukari couldn't believe it. The man he had trusted, the man who had mentored him, was the enemy. But the shock didn't stop there. As Tukari dug deeper, he found another name, Vera. She had been involved too. She had known about Rylan's betrayal all along, but had kept it hidden from Tukari. She had warned him, but not enough. Why had she kept the truth from him? The walls seemed to close in on Tukari as the full weight of the betrayal hit him. His closest allies, the people he had trusted most, were the very ones working against him. The enemy wasn't just outside the Federation. It was within, hiding behind the faces of those he had sworn to fight beside. Tukari knew what he had to do. The truth was now in his hands, and there was no going back. He had to stop them. He couldn't trust anyone anymore. Takari stood at the edge of the high cliff, staring down at the vast expanse of the desolate landscape below. The wind howled around him, the storm clouds gathering in the distance, but his mind was far from the wild weather. His thoughts were focused on the mission ahead, one that had been given to him just hours earlier. It was the most important one of his career, the final mission. The Federation's fate rested on this. The encrypted message had been clear: infiltrate the Takari Empire's central command and retrieve the intelligence that would cripple their plans for an all-out invasion. It was a mission he couldn't refuse, not when so much was at stake. But there was something else about this mission. Something deeper. The choices ahead would change everything. He wasn't alone in this. Vera was with him. His longtime mentor, his trusted friend, had stood by him through countless battles, guiding him with wisdom. But now, he wasn't sure if she could be trusted. As he turned to face her, he noticed the tension in her posture. She wasn't looking at him, her eyes fixed on the distant horizon, as if searching for something beyond the storm. He knew her well enough to understand that she was holding something back. "Vera!" Takari called, his voice firm but filled with a quiet urgency. "What's going on? You've been distant ever since we got the orders. Is there something I'm missing?" Vera turned slowly, her face a mask of calm, but Takari could see the unease in her eyes. "There's more to this mission than you know," she said softly. "Much more. I've tried to protect you from it, but now you need to know." Takari felt his heart race. "What are you talking about? Tell me, Vera. What's the truth?" She took a deep breath, her eyes locking with his. "I've been working with the Federation's inner circle for years, Takari. We've always had an agreement with the Takari Empire. It's been a fragile peace, but it was a peace nonetheless. We weren't supposed to go to war." Takari's mind spun. "What do you mean? Why didn't you tell me?" "Because I never wanted you to be involved in this," Vera whispered, her voice trembling. "But now they want to use you. The Federation has made a choice, and it's not the one you think." Takari stepped back, shock written all over his face. "What do you mean? The Federation wants to use me? For what?" Vera hesitated before speaking, the weight of her words heavy in the air. "They want you to be the trigger, Takari. The final choice that will start the war. You're not just a soldier in their eyes. You're the weapon." Takari's mind raced. He had always been loyal to the Federation. He had always believed in their cause. But now, this revelation turned everything upside down. "No," he said, shaking his head. "I won't be anyone's weapon. I can't." Vera's eyes filled with sorrow, but there was no turning back now. "You don't have a choice anymore, Takari. The decision has been made. The Federation believes this is the only way to end the Takari threat, once and for all." Takari clenched his fists, his heart heavy with the weight of what he had just learned. Was this really his purpose? Was his life really just about starting a war? The thought made him sick to his stomach. "I'm not doing it," Takari said, his voice filled with determination. "I won't be a part of this. I'll stop them. I'll find another way." Vera's face grew darker. "You can't, Takari. It's already too late. The Federation has their eyes on you. You're their final piece. If you try to back out now, they'll come for you. They'll come for all of us." Takari felt the weight of her words, but he knew deep down that he couldn't go through with it. He couldn't be the trigger that set off a war. He couldn't be the one responsible for the deaths of countless innocent people. He turned away from Vera, his eyes set on the horizon. The storm was closing in, the thunder rolling in the distance. But in the midst of the chaos, he knew what he had to do. "I won't be their weapon," he said, his voice unwavering. "I will stop them, even if it costs me everything." Vera's voice was soft, almost regretful. "Then we'll have to fight, Takari. We'll have to fight against everything we've ever known." Takari nodded, determination in his eyes. "I'm ready." Without another word, they left the cliff behind, moving swiftly toward the Federation's hidden base. Takari knew the path ahead was treacherous. The Federation had made their choice, and it was one that would haunt him forever. But now, He had a new purpose. He wasn't going to follow orders anymore. He was going to take a stand. As they reached the entrance of the base, Takari stopped and looked at Vera one last time. Whatever happens, we make the choice together. We'll end this. Vera nodded, her expression filled with both sadness and resolve. Together. The final choice had been made. There was no turning back.